The story: a new beginning. The cake was a lie. A scandal that launched a new life. Imagine this. You are celebrating your birthday, 8 months pregnant, with your husband by your side. And suddenly, his mistress appears. She throws a cake in your face. And everyone, including your husband's friends, laughs at your humiliation. But they wouldn't be laughing for long. When Alara discovered she was pregnant, after years of trying, she felt the last piece of her carefully constructed life had clicked perfectly into place. Although the pregnancy hadn't been easy, with severe morning sickness in the first trimester and gestational diabetes in the second, Alara approached motherhood with the same determined optimism she applied to everything. As her 33rd birthday approached, Alara was 8 months pregnant. Her sister, Lena, insisted on organizing a celebration at La Dolce Vita, an elegant Italian restaurant with a private room in Sao Paulo. Despite Alara's protests that she was too exhausted for a party, Lena was adamant. "You deserve to be celebrated," Lena said, "especially now. Let people show you how much they love you." Alara gave in, touched by her sister's insistence. The night of the party arrived. Alara wore a navy blue maternity dress she had bought on impulse, one that made her feel beautiful despite the discomfort of late-stage pregnancy. Ethan, her husband, had been distant lately, blaming work stress. But tonight he seemed attentive, helping her into the car and holding her hand as they walked into the restaurant. The private room at La Dolce Vita had been transformed with silver and gold decorations, and a Happy Birthday Alara banner hung on one wall. About 30 guests mingled around high tables: colleagues, neighborhood friends, family, and several of Ethan's friends from his investment firm. A rowdy group whose frat boy mentality always made Alara a little uncomfortable. It was the perfect celebration. Lena had ordered a 3-tier cake decorated with fondant flowers that matched the baby room theme Alara had chosen. As the evening progressed, Ethan tapped his glass to call for attention. "I'd like to make a toast," he announced, his voice echoing through the room as conversations died down. "To my beautiful wife on her special day." Alara stood beside him, preening as the focus of attention turned to her. Ethan continued, "Alara, you are glowing, darling. I am the luckiest man in the world to have you as my wife, and soon, the mother of our son." The gathered friends and family raised their glasses in unison. "To Alara!" What no one knew, what Alara herself couldn't have imagined, was that Ethan's words were a masterpiece of deception. As he spoke of luck and love, he was concealing a secret that was about to explode in the most devastating way possible. Lena handed Alara the cake knife, a silver-plated heirloom that belonged to their grandmother. Ethan put his hand over Alara's as they positioned the knife on the top tier, a perfect moment that Lena captured with her phone. Alara smiled, feeling a small movement from the baby, as if her unborn child was participating in the celebration. It was then that the private room door suddenly swung open. The woman who entered was a stranger to Alara. She was younger, perhaps 28, with shiny dark hair that cascaded over her shoulders, and a red dress that emphasized her slender figure. Everything about her radiated confidence as she scanned the room with cold indifference. Conversation instantly died. In the sudden silence, the woman's high heels echoed sharply on the wooden floor as she strode toward the center of the room. Alara noticed Ethan's hand stiffen over hers. When she looked at him, his face was pale. "Don't let me interrupt your family moment," the woman said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Alara looked from the stranger to her husband, confusion clouding her features. "Ethan, who is she?" Before Ethan could reply, the woman continued her advance until she stopped directly in front of the cake table. "I'm Chloe," she said to Alara, though her eyes remained fixed on Ethan. "Ask your husband who I am." Ethan stepped forward, positioning himself between the two women. "This isn't the place," he said quietly to Chloe. "Please leave." Chloe laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "It's not the place? Is that what you said when you were in my bed last night? This isn't the place?" The room gasped collectively. Ilara's hand moved instinctively to her belly, a protective gesture for her unborn child. "Ethan, what is she talking about?" Ilara's voice trembled. Ethan remained motionless, offering no defense, no denial. His silence was confirmation enough. Chloe's eyes finally landed on Ilara, observing her pregnant belly with evident disdain. "He promised to leave you for 6 months, even after he knew about the baby." Her lip curled in disgust. "He said it wasn't his." Ilara felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her feet. 6 months? Her son had been conceived 8 months earlier, meaning Ethan had started his affair soon after discovering he was going to be a father. "Is that true?" Ilara asked, although she already knew the answer from Ethan's anguished expression. Chloe didn't wait for Ethan's reply. In one swift movement, she reached forward, grabbed the top tier of the cake, and hurled it directly at Ilara. The cake hit Ilara square in the chest. Icing splattered onto her face, hair, and the navy blue dress she had so carefully chosen. Chunks of cake slid down her pregnant belly, leaving streaks of buttercream in their wake. "Now you look as pathetic as you really are," Chloe spat. For 3 agonizing seconds, the room was in complete silence. Ilara stood motionless, cake dripping from her hair and eyelashes, the sheer humiliation of the moment overpowering even the shock of discovering her husband's betrayal. Then, from the corner table where Ethan's friends were sitting, a snicker broke the silence. The snicker grew into a laugh, which gave permission for others to join in. Within moments, several guests were laughing, some out of genuine amusement, others from the discomfort of the situation. Ilara looked around the room with cake-smeared eyes, watching the laughing faces. Then she turned to Ethan, silently pleading for him to do something, say something, defend her. But Ethan remained paralyzed between his wife and his mistress, saying nothing, doing nothing. Only Lena rushed to her sister's aid, grabbing napkins from a nearby table and hurrying to Ilara's side as she glared at the laughing guests. "What is wrong with all of you?" Lena shouted, her voice cutting through the laughter. The events that followed would happen in a terrifying cascade, each moment more shocking than the last. As Lena tried to wipe the cake from her sister's face, Ilara suddenly gasped, doubling over in pain. "Something is wrong," she whispered, clutching her belly. "The baby!" The laughter died instantly. Ilara's face contorted in pain as a dark stain appeared on her dress beneath the cake smears. Her water had broken nearly a month before her due date. "Call an ambulance!" Lena shouted, supporting her sister as Ilara's knees buckled. As guests frantically reached for their phones, Ethan finally moved toward his wife. "Darling, I'm so sorry," he began. Ilara's eyes flashed with a fury that stopped him mid-sentence. "Don't touch me!" she gritted out. Near the door, Chloe's expression had shifted from vengeful satisfaction to horror as she watched the medical emergency unfold, a consequence she clearly hadn't anticipated. Without saying another word, she backed out of the room and disappeared. Within minutes, paramedics arrived and rushed Ilara to Madrid Central Hospital. As they wheeled her onto the gurney, her eyes met Lena's. "Don't leave me," she whispered. "I won't," Lena promised, squeezing her sister's hand. "Never." At the hospital, doctors immediately recognized the gravity of the situation. Ilara was in premature labor, complicated by signs of placental abruption, a dangerous condition where the placenta separates from the uterine wall before delivery. The emotional and physical stress of the public humiliation had likely triggered the complication. In the waiting room, an agonizing drama unfolded between the family members who had followed the ambulance. Ethan paced anxiously, his handsome face now haggard with worry and guilt. Ilara's parents huddled together, her mother weeping softly, while her father, Robert, stared straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge his son-in-law's presence. Lena stood apart from them all, typing furiously on her phone. When Ethan approached her, she looked up with such venom that he physically recoiled. "What are you doing?" he asked. Waving the phone, Lena showed him the screen. It was playing a video, footage she had recorded during the birthday toast and cake cutting. The video clearly showed Chloe's entrance, her accusations, the cake throwing, and, most damning of all, the laughter that followed, and Ethan's complete inability to defend his pregnant wife. "I was filming what I thought would be a sweet birthday memory," Lena said, her voice low and dangerous. "Instead, I captured exactly who you are, who your friends are, and who that woman is." Ethan's face grew even paler. "Lena, please!" "I already sent it to Ilara's lawyer." Lena cut him off. "And if anything happens to my sister or that baby, I'm sending it to every single person you know." Before Ethan could reply, a doctor entered the waiting room. Everyone turned to him. The family conflict, momentarily suspended by the collective concern for Ilara and her unborn child. "The stress caused complications," the doctor explained soberly. "We are doing our best, but both mother and baby are in danger. We are preparing for an emergency C-section." Ilara's mother sobbed audibly. Her father finally spoke, addressing Ethan directly for the first time. "Ethan, if anything happens to them, you'll pay." With that, as the doctor left to return to Ilara, Lena turned to Ethan one last time. "This is your fault," she said. "All of it." Behind the operating room doors, Ilara lay, conscious but sedated, on the surgical table, as the doctors worked with urgency to deliver her baby. The bright lights above her seemed to pulse to the rhythm of the pain radiating through her body. "Blood pressure is dropping," a nurse called out. "We need to move faster," the chief surgeon replied. "The baby is showing signs of distress." Through the haze of the medication and the pain, Ilara could hear the urgency in their voices. A part of her registered that she should be terrified, but instead she felt strangely detached, as if watching the events from afar. The humiliation of the birthday party seemed like a distant nightmare compared to the very real possibility of losing her child. "Stay with us, Ilara," the anesthetist encouraged, noting her fading consciousness. "Your baby needs you strong right now." Those words cut through Ilara's mental fog. "My baby needs me." The thought became her anchor. While the medical team worked to save both of them, in the waiting room, the tension had become unbearable. 2 hours passed without news. Ethan sat alone in a corner, repeatedly calling Chloe, who didn't answer. Ilara's family, meanwhile, huddled together on the opposite side of the room. Lena had stepped out briefly to speak with Ilara's best friend, Zara, who had just arrived at the hospital after hearing the news. "Is it true?" Zara asked, eyes wide with disbelief. "Ethan was cheating?" Lena nodded gravely. "For months, apparently. And the woman threw cake at Ilara while she was 8 months pregnant? I recorded everything," Lena confirmed, showing Zara a clip of the video. "His friends from work were laughing, and Ethan just stood there like a statue." Zara watched the video with her hand over her mouth. "That is monstrous," she whispered. "How is Ilara?" Lena's composure finally broke. "We don't know. They're doing an emergency C-section, some kind of complication with the placenta." Zara hugged Lena tightly. "Ilara is the strongest person I know," she said firmly. "She's going to get through this." As they embraced, a surgeon in blue scrubs entered the waiting room. Everyone fell silent immediately, turning toward him with expressions ranging from hope to dread. The surgeon's face revealed nothing as he lowered his mask. "The baby is born," he announced. "A girl. Kilos and 300 grams. A collective gasp filled the room. Ethan stood up. "And Ilara?" he asked. The surgeon's expression tightened slightly. Your wife had significant hemorrhaging during the procedure. We stabilized her, but she lost a lot of blood and remains in critical condition. The next 24 hours are crucial. Ilara's mother audibly sobbed. Her father finally spoke, addressing the surgeon. And the baby? The baby is doing well. She's premature and having some respiratory distress, which is common at 34 weeks. She's been taken to the neonatal ICU for oxygen support and monitoring. Can we see them? Lena asked. The baby, yes, although only 2 visitors at a time in the NICU. Ilara is in recovery and heavily sedated. 1 person can sit with her once she's transferred to intensive care, which should be in about an hour. As the surgeon left, Ilara's parents immediately stated their intention to see their granddaughter. Ethan moved to follow them, but Robert blocked his path. You've done enough, he said coldly. Stay away from my daughter and my granddaughter. Ethan, still reeling from the evening's events, didn't argue. He sank back into his chair as Ilara's parents followed a nurse toward the NICU. Lena approached Ethan, her earlier fury now tempered by exhaustion. Why? She asked simply. Why did you do this to her? Ethan stared at the floor, unable to meet her eyes. I never meant for any of this to happen. That's not an answer, Lena insisted. Ilara was always loving and supportive. She was so excited about the baby. Your baby. Ethan ran his hands through his hair in frustration. It just happened. Chloe was new at the firm. We started working late together. Ilara was so focused on the pregnancy, always talking about the baby, making plans. So, while my sister was preparing to bring your child into the world, you were sleeping with a colleague because you felt neglected? Lena's voice dripped with contempt. And you told this woman the baby wasn't yours? How could you say that? Ethan had no reply. The magnitude of his betrayal, laid bare in Lena's concise summary, finally seemed to hit him. I need to fix this, he said weakly. You can't, Lena said flatly. Some things can't be fixed with an apology. The best thing you can do now is leave. Ilara doesn't need the stress of seeing you when she wakes up. She's my wife, Ethan protested. She's my daughter. You should have remembered that before you started sleeping with Chloe, Lena retorted. Before you stood by, while she assaulted your pregnant wife. Before you and your friends laughed as Ilara collapsed. Ethan winced at each accusation. I didn't laugh, he mumbled. No, you just did nothing, which is worse. Lena checked her phone, which was ringing continuously. I'm going to go see my sister. You should know the video is already circulating. Zara has contacts at several news outlets, and they're very interested in the story of an investment banker whose mistress attacked his pregnant wife at her birthday party, triggering a premature birth. Ethan's head snapped up. You can't post that video. That could ruin my career. Lena's laughter was humorless. Your career? My sister almost died tonight. Your daughter is fighting for breath in the NICU. And you're worried about your job? Without waiting for his answer, Lena walked away, leaving Ethan alone with the consequences of his actions, which were only just beginning to unfold around him. The intensive care unit was eerily quiet. Except for the constant beeping of the monitors, Ilara was unconscious, her skin almost as white as the hospital sheets, with multiple IVs in her arms. Lena sat beside her, holding her sister's limp hand while checking her phone with the free one. The video had indeed gone viral. In just 3 hours, it had been shared thousands of times across multiple social media platforms. News sites were picking up the story, with headlines like Banker's Mistress Attacks Pregnant Wife, Triggers Premature Birth, and Cake Assault Leads to Medical Emergency, Husband Stands By. Ethan's investment firm, Seguros Valores, was tagged in hundreds of posts, with people demanding to know if they condoned their employees' behavior. Chloe's identity was quickly uncovered by internet detectives who recognized her from the firm's website. Her social media accounts were being flooded with outraged comments. Lena felt a grim satisfaction at the swift public response. While she hadn't personally sent the video to the media, she hadn't stopped Zara from doing so. Ilara would need all the support she could get in the coming days, and the court of public opinion was firmly on her side. A faint groan brought Lena's attention back to her sister. Ilara's eyelids fluttered, and then slowly opened. "I'm here," Lena reassured her, dropping the phone immediately. "You're okay. You're in the hospital." Ilara's hand moved weakly to her belly, now noticeably flat beneath the hospital sheet. Panic flashed in her eyes. "The baby?" she whispered urgently. "She's in the NICU. 2 kilos and 300 grams. Mom and Dad are with her now. She needs some help breathing, but the doctors say she's strong." Relief flooded Ilara's face, quickly followed by the return of awareness about the events that led to her hospitalization. Tears welled in her eyes. "It wasn't a nightmare, was it?" she asked. "Ethan? Chloe, it was real." Lena squeezed her sister's hand. "I'm so sorry, Ilara." Ilara turned her face away, the tears running silently down her cheeks. "Everyone was laughing," she said, her voice choked. "My husband's mistress threw cake at me and people laughed." "Not everyone," Lena corrected gently. "And the ones who laughed are facing serious consequences now." Ilara looked back at her, confusion evident through her tears. "What do you mean?" Lena hesitated, unsure if it was the moment to explain about the viral video and the public outcry. Before she could decide, a nurse walked into the room. "She's awake," the nurse observed with a warm smile. "That's wonderful. How are you feeling, Ilara?" "Like I was hit by a truck," Ilara admitted weakly. "That's to be expected after what you've been through. Your doctor will be in shortly to explain everything. In the meantime, there's someone who would like to meet Mommy, if you're feeling up to it." As the nurse spoke, another staff member wheeled in a clear bassinet containing a small bundle in a pink blanket. Despite her exhaustion and pain, Ilara immediately tried to sit up. "Careful," the nurse warned, adjusting the bed to a slight incline. "You have a fresh incision to protect." With practical efficiency, the nurse lifted the small baby from the bassinet and placed her gently on Ilara's chest, arranging the tubes and wires that connected the newborn to a portable monitor. "She still needs oxygen support, so she can only stay for a few minutes," the nurse explained. "But skin-to-skin contact is beneficial for both of you." Ilara gazed down at her daughter's face with awe. Despite the trauma of her birth, despite the betrayal that preceded it, the connection was immediate and overwhelming. The baby's eyes were closed, her tiny features perfect in miniature, a wisp of dark hair peeking out from beneath the hospital cap. "Hello, little one," Ilara whispered, her tears now falling for an entirely different reason. "I'm your mommy." Lena watched the moment with a lump in her throat. In the midst of the catastrophe, this small miracle somehow made everything else recede in importance. "Have you thought of a name?" the nurse asked, checking the baby's monitors. Ilara nodded slowly. Her eyes never left her daughter's face. "Ilara," she said softly. "Ilara means wisdom." While Ilara bonded with her newborn daughter, Ethan was facing a different kind of reality in the hospital parking lot. His phone was exploding with notifications, calls from his boss, text messages from colleagues, emails from clients who had seen the video. His parents had left 3 voicemails, each one more distressed than the last. Chloe had finally returned his calls, but only to inform him that she had been placed on administrative leave, pending an investigation by the firm's HR department. She blamed him completely, claiming he had misled her about the state of his marriage. "You told me she knew we were seeing each other," Chloe had sobbed over the phone. "You said you were separated in everything but name. Now they're calling me a homewrecker, and I'm getting death threats online." Ethan had no comfort to offer. The magnitude of what they had done was finally sinking in. He had betrayed his pregnant wife. He had lied to his mistress about the state of his marriage. And when the moment of truth came, he had stood by. failing to protect either woman. His phone rang again. His boss. With resignation, he answered. "Ethan, I need you in my office tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock sharp," the senior partner said without preamble. "The executive committee is calling an emergency meeting about your situation." "I understand," Ethan replied awkwardly. "Ethan, I've been getting calls from clients all night," his boss continued, rage evident in his voice. "The firm's reputation is being damaged every time that video is shared." "I'm sorry," Ethan offered inadequately. "Save it for tomorrow," his boss snapped before hanging up. Ethan sat in his car, the enormity of the life he had built crumbling around him. He had jeopardized his marriage, his relationship with his newborn daughter, his professional reputation, and his firm's standing. All for an affair that had started as a flattering distraction and evolved into an addiction to the excitement and novelty Chloe represented. As the hospital lights reflected on his windshield, Ethan made a decision. He would fight to fix things. He would beg for Alara's forgiveness. He would promise to be a better man, a devoted father. Surely, once the initial shock wore off, she would see that ending their family was not the answer. With that resolve, his spine straightened, Ethan finally drove home. To the empty house he shared with Alara, unaware that the damage he had caused was too great to be repaired by a simple apology. The next morning, what had started as a viral video had blossomed into a full-blown media firestorm. The hashtag Justice for Alara was trending nationally, with people from all walks of life expressing outrage at the treatment of a pregnant woman by her husband, his mistress, and the laughing bystanders. News vans had gathered outside the hospital, though security kept reporters at bay. Ethan's investment firm, Seguros Valores, had issued a concise statement saying they were investigating the matter internally and did not condone the behavior depicted in the video. Several of Ethan's clients had publicly announced they would be taking their business elsewhere, unwilling to associate with someone whose personal conduct was so clearly at odds with their corporate values. Meanwhile, in the hospital NICU, Alara sat in a wheelchair beside her daughter's incubator, with a very different kind of media playing on the small television mounted on the wall. A local news anchor was discussing the incident with barely disguised disgust. Sources close to the family say both mother and baby are in stable condition this morning, following the stress-induced premature birth, the anchor reported. The husband, identified as Ethan Vidal, a senior investment manager at Seguros Valores, has not issued any statement regarding the incident. Alara's mother reached for the remote and muted the television. "You don't need to listen to that right now, dear." Alara's eyes remained fixed on her daughter, who was breathing more easily this morning, according to the doctors. "It's okay, Mom. It doesn't matter anymore." Her father, Robert, who stood protectively near the door, snorted. "Doesn't matter. That man humiliated you in front of everyone you know. His girlfriend assaulted you. They put my granddaughter's life in danger. Of course it matters." Alara finally looked up, her expression calm, despite the lingering paleness of her skin. "I mean, the media coverage doesn't matter. What matters is right here." She gently stroked little Alara's arm, which reflexively grabbed her finger. "Everything else is just noise." Her parents exchanged worried glances. Their daughter's composure seemed almost unnatural, given the circumstances. The obstetrician had warned that Alara might be experiencing emotional numbness as a protective mechanism against the trauma. Lena walked into the NICU. She had just returned from Alara's house with clean clothes and toiletries. "Security stopped me at the entrance," she reported. "Ethan is trying to get in and to see you and the baby. They're holding him in the lobby for now." Alara's calm facade cracked slightly. "I don't want to see him," she said quietly. "You don't have to." Her father reassured her. "I'll take care of it." As he turned to leave, Alara called out to him. "Dad, please, no scenes. I just want him to leave." Robert acquiesced reluctantly, and then went to intercept his son-in-law. In the hospital lobby, Ethan sat rigidly in an uncomfortable plastic chair with a small teddy bear clutched in his hands. He had come straight from his morning meeting at the firm, where he had been placed on indefinite leave, pending a full investigation. His colleagues had averted their eyes as he cleared his desk. No one wanted to be associated with the man whose face was being vilified on social media. When he saw Ilara's father approaching, Ethan stood up quickly, hope shining in his haggard features. "Robert, thank you for coming. I need to see Ilara and the baby. I've been trying." "Stop." Robert held up a hand. "Ilara doesn't want to see you. Not now. Maybe ever." Ethan's face crumpled. "She can't stop me from seeing my daughter." "Your daughter?" Robert's voice rose dangerously, drawing glances from nearby visitors. He struggled to control himself. "The daughter you told your girlfriend wasn't yours, the one who was born a month early because of your actions. I made a terrible mistake," Ethan admitted, his eyes pleading. "Many mistakes. But I love Ilara. I love our baby. I want to fix things." Robert looked at his son-in-law with cold assessment. "Ethan, I've known you for 7 years. I welcomed you into our family. I trusted you with my daughter's happiness. And now I see that I never really knew you." "People make mistakes," Ethan insisted. "Ilara and I can get through this." "This wasn't a mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or saying something insensitive in anger. You carried on an affair for months. You lied about the paternity of your child, and you stood by while your pregnant wife was publicly humiliated and went into premature labor. Those are choices, Ethan. Deliberate choices that reveal your character." Ethan had no answer for this scathing assessment. Robert continued, his voice lowering. "Ilara has instructed the hospital that you are not allowed into her room. She's also contacted her lawyer. I suggest you do the same." "Her lawyer?" Ethan repeated, stunned. "It's been less than 24 hours, and in those hours, she almost died bringing your child into the world," Robert pointed out. "Perhaps that has cleared her thinking about what she deserves in life. It certainly has cleared mine." With that, Robert turned and walked back toward the elevators, leaving Ethan holding the small teddy bear in the lobby. Surrounded by strangers who were casting him curious glances at the man they recognized from the viral video, Ilara stood at the window of her hospital room, watching as Lena maneuvered the car up to the main entrance. After a week of recovery for both mother and daughter, they were finally being discharged. Little Ilara, though still smaller than average, had shown remarkable resilience, quickly moving from oxygen support to breathing on her own. Ilara's physical injuries from the emergency C-section were healing well, according to her doctors. The emotional injuries would take longer, but Ilara had surprised everyone, especially herself, with her clarity and resolve. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Ilara turned, expecting a nurse with the discharge papers, but instead, she found Zara, her best friend from college. "Ready for the great escape?" Zara asked, walking in with a large gift bag. Ilara smiled, a warm genuineness breaking through her reserved expression. "More than ready. The hospital food is everything they say it is." Zara put down the bag and hugged her friend carefully, mindful of her healing incision. "How are you really?" she asked, studying Ilara's face. Ilara sighed, sitting on the edge of the hospital bed, which was neatly made, physically improving every day. "Emotionally, I'm still figuring it out. It's like I'm watching someone else's life implode. Except every once in a while, I remember it's mine." Zara nodded sympathetically. "That's a normal response to trauma. Your brain is protecting you while you process everything." "The therapist they sent me said the same thing," Ilara acknowledged. "She also said it's okay not to have all the answers right now." "Wise woman," Zara approved. "So what now? Mom and Dad want me to stay with them for a while, but I said no. I need to stand on my own, figure out who I am now." Ilara's eyes drifted to the bassinet where little Ilara was sleeping peacefully. "Besides, their house is full of stairs, which is not ideal with a newborn and a C-section." Where are you going? Home, for now. Ethan picked up most of his things yesterday, according to Lena. He's staying in a hotel while we... Ilara hesitated over the word. Separate. Zara raised an eyebrow. Just separating. Ilara's gaze hardened slightly. For now. My lawyer advised me to take it slow. Priority 1 was getting a protective order based on Chloe's assault. Priority 2 was securing interim financial support for little Ilara and me while I'm on maternity leave. Divorce is step 3. So you've already made up your mind? Ilara nodded slowly. I keep thinking about that moment when Chloe was throwing accusations, and Ethan just stood there. He didn't deny anything. He didn't defend me. He didn't even try to stop her from throwing the cake. If he couldn't protect me in that moment, how could I ever trust him to protect little Ilara? Zara squeezed her friend's hand. You're making the right decision, and you're not alone in this. Speaking of which, she picked up the gift bag she had brought. This is from everyone at the office. We took up a collection. Ilara opened the bag to find a portable bassinet, several packs of newborn diapers, and an envelope. Inside the envelope was a card signed by dozens of her colleagues and a substantial gift card to a baby store. Tears welled in Ilara's eyes. This is so generous. That's not all, Zara continued. The partners extended your maternity leave to 16 weeks fully paid. They said, take all the time you need. Ilara was momentarily speechless. I don't know what to say. Say you'll let your friends help you, Zara suggested gently. You've always been the strong one, the one who has everything under control. But even the strongest people need support sometimes. Before Ilara could respond, a nurse walked in pushing a small cart. Ready to go home, Mommy? She asked cheerfully. I just need your signature on these discharge papers, and you and little Ilara are free to go. As Ilara signed the paperwork, Lena appeared in the doorway with a car seat. The carriage awaits, my lady, she announced with a dramatic bow. For the first time in what felt like ages, Ilara laughed. A genuine, spontaneous sound that seemed to surprise even her. It was a small moment of lightness in what had been the darkest week of her life, a reminder that joy could still exist alongside the pain. Outside the hospital, a few persistent reporters still lingered, hoping for a glimpse of the woman whose story had captured the public's imagination. Hospital security formed a protective barrier as Lena maneuvered the car close, shielding Ilara and the baby from prying eyes and cameras. As they drove away from the hospital, Ilara looked out the window at the passing city. The world looked different somehow. The colors sharper, the contrast more defined. Or perhaps it was Ilara herself who had changed, her perception altered by the seismic shifts in her life. Are you okay? Lena asked, glancing at her sister in the rearview mirror. Ilara looked at little Ilara, who was sleeping peacefully in her car seat. Then she looked down the road ahead. I'm going to be, she replied, and was surprised to find that she actually believed it. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan sat in the office of the Chief Human Resources Officer at Seguros Valores, a stern woman named Viviana, who had been at the firm for 20 years. Beside her was Mr. Harold, the firm's founding partner himself, his expression grave. The executive committee has concluded its review of your situation, Viviana stated formally. Due to the grave nature of the allegations and the negative publicity impacting our client relationships, we have no choice but to terminate your employment, effective immediately. Ethan had expected this, yet the reality still hit him like a physical blow. I understand, he managed to say. Your actions reflect poorly on this firm, Mr. Harold added, his disapproval evident. We have lost 3 major clients in the past week. Our reputation for discretion and integrity has been compromised. What about Chloe? Ethan asked. Was she also fired? Go up fired. Viviana's lips tightened. Ms. Roberts resigned yesterday. That matter is closed. Ethan nodded, unsurprised. Chloe had made it clear she wanted nothing more to do with him or the situation. Her last text message had been blunt. My life is ruined because of you. Never contact me again. You will receive 2 weeks severance pay, Viviana continued. Your personal belongings have been packed and are waiting at reception. Due to the sensitivity of client information, you will be escorted out of the building immediately following this meeting. It was a stunning fall from grace. Just a week ago, Ethan was on track to make partner within the next 2 years. Now, he was being treated like a security risk. His career was in ruins. His reputation destroyed. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Mr. Harold asked, his tone suggesting there was nothing Ethan could say to improve the situation. Ethan pondered for a moment. I would like to apologize for the damage I've caused the firm. My personal failings should not have impacted Seguros Valores' reputation. Mr. Harold's expression didn't soften. Perhaps you should have considered that before you engaged in an inappropriate workplace relationship and allowed it to become a public spectacle. The meeting ended shortly after, and as promised, Ethan was escorted to the lobby by security. As he carried the box containing his office belongings to his car, he couldn't help but notice the sideways glances of former colleagues who hurried past without speaking. In the space of 1 week, Ethan had lost his wife, his home, his job, and his reputation. Even his parents had expressed their profound disappointment, his mother weeping openly during their last phone call. The only thing he had left was his connection to little Alara, a daughter he had yet to meet, born under circumstances he could barely have imagined. As he drove away from the office building for the last time, Ethan resolved that no matter what, he would fight to be a father to his daughter. It was the only relationship he still had a chance to build right from the start. What Ethan didn't yet understand was that rebuilding any part of his life would require confronting the foundational character flaws that led him to this point, a process that would be more difficult and painful than losing his external markers of success. 2 weeks after returning home from the hospital, Alara sat in the elegant office of attorney Diana Fuentes, widely regarded as one of the city's most formidable divorce lawyers. Little Alara slept peacefully in her car seat beside Alara's chair, oblivious to the serious discussion that would shape her future. Let's be clear about your priorities, Diana said, her gray hair pulled into a severe bun that matched her no-nonsense demeanor. What matters most to you in this divorce? Alara had thought about this extensively. Financial security for little Alara and me. Primary physical custody with appropriate visitation for Ethan. I won't keep him away from his daughter, but I need to be the one making the day-to-day decisions. And I want the house. I designed every inch of that baby room. I can't bear the thought of having to leave it. Diana nodded in approval. All are reasonable requests, given the circumstances of your separation and the evidence we have. By evidence, you mean the video? Alara clarified, her expression hardening. Precisely. While Madrid is a no-fault divorce state, meaning we don't need to prove misconduct to obtain a divorce, the evidence of adultery and the incident at your birthday can certainly sway the court regarding the division of assets and potentially custody arrangements. Alara shifted uncomfortably. I hate that my humiliation has become a leverage point. Diana's professional demeanor softened slightly. I understand, but remember, you did not create this situation. Your husband made choices that led to these consequences. We are merely ensuring those consequences do not include financial hardship for you and your daughter. Little Alara stirred in her car seat, making small sounds Alara had already learned to recognize as precursors to hunger. With practical movements, Alara picked up her daughter and prepared to breastfeed. Is that all right? She asked the lawyer. Of course, Diana reassured her. I have 3 children myself. Now, let's discuss our next steps. Have you and Ethan communicated directly since you left the hospital? Alara shook her head, while nestling little Alara against her chest. Only through Lena or my parents. He's sent several texts asking to see the baby, but I told him I want all communication to go through our lawyers for now. That is wise. Diana approved. The restraining order against Chloe is still in effect? Yes, though I haven't seen or heard from her since that night. According to Lena's sources, she's moved back to Barcelona to live with her parents. Diana made a note in her file. Good. One less complication. Now, Ethan has retained counsel. Gerardo Herrera, a respected family law attorney. I've faced him many times. He's requested a preliminary meeting to discuss temporary arrangements while the divorce moves forward. Ilara nodded, gently stroking little Ilara's cheek as she nursed. When? Next week, if you're feeling strong. You wouldn't need to see Ethan. It would be a lawyer's meeting with our respective clients in separate rooms. That's fine, Ilara assented. The sooner we establish some clear boundaries, the better. Diana studied her client with professional assessment. Ilara Vidal presented a compelling figure. A new mother still recovering physically from a traumatic birth, yet demonstrating remarkable composure and clarity. If they ended up in court, a judge would likely sympathize with her situation, especially with the viral video providing such damning evidence of her husband's betrayal. There's one more thing we should discuss, Diana said carefully. The public nature of your situation. The video has received millions of views. You've been contacted for interviews, I understand. Ilara nodded reluctantly. Several media outlets, 2 talk shows, and a documentary filmmaker. I've declined all of them. And that is likely wise during pending litigation, Diana agreed. However, you need to be prepared for the continued public interest. Ethan's lawyer could argue that the viral nature of the video has unfairly prejudiced public opinion against his client. The video only shows what really happened, Ilara pointed out. I didn't create or distribute it. True. But perception matters in these cases. We'll have to be prepared to counter any argument that Ethan is being unfairly vilified. Ilara laughed humorlessly. He vilified himself when he stood by and watched while his mistress assaulted his pregnant wife. Diana's thin smile acknowledged the point. Indeed, we plan to meet again before next week's preliminary discussion. In the meantime, continue documenting any communication from Ethan, and call me immediately if Chloe attempts to contact you in violation of the restraining order. As Ilara gathered her things to leave, Diana offered one last observation. You know, many clients in your position are still in shock at this stage. Angry, vengeful, or completely overwhelmed. You seem remarkably focused. Ilara looked down at little Ilara, now asleep on her shoulder. I don't have the luxury of falling apart. Every decision I make now affects her future. She met the lawyer's gaze directly. Besides, I shed enough tears for Ethan at the hospital. I'm done crying over someone who was capable of hurting me so deliberately. Diana nodded in approval. Channel that clarity. It will serve you well in the months ahead. Across town, Ethan sat in a considerably less imposing office, across from his own attorney. Gerardo Herrera was in his 60s, with the patient demeanor of someone who had seen every possible manifestation of marital discord over his 40-year career. The preliminary meeting is set for next Wednesday, Gerardo informed him. Diana Fuentes is tough but fair. She'll come in with specific demands regarding temporary support and custody arrangements while the divorce moves forward. Ethan leaned forward anxiously. Will Ilara be there? I need to talk to her. Make her understand that... Gerardo held up a hand. No, you will not see Ilara. This is a meeting between lawyers, with clients in separate rooms, specifically to avoid direct confrontation at this emotional stage. And Ethan, I have to be frank with you. Your position is not strong. Ethan's shoulders slumped. Because of the video? Partially, yes. The video presents compelling evidence, both of infidelity and of behavior that put your wife and child in danger. But more generally, your actions have created a narrative that is difficult to fight. You had an affair while your wife was pregnant. Your mistress publicly humiliated her, triggering a premature birth. You lost your job as a result. These facts do not position you favorably for custody negotiations. Ethan ran his hands through his hair in frustration. So, what do? We will present you as remorseful, responsible, and focused on being a good father moving forward. We will acknowledge past mistakes without dwelling on them. We will emphasize your commitment to effective co-parenting, despite the end of the marriage. But I don't want the marriage to end, Ethan insisted. I made a terrible mistake. I want another chance. Gerardo's expression was understanding but firm. Ethan, you need to accept reality. Ilara has filed for divorce. Given what happened, reconciliation is extremely unlikely. Our focus now is securing reasonable custody arrangements and fair financial terms. Ethan slumped back in his chair, the finality of the situation setting in. I haven't even met my daughter yet, he said quietly. That is something we will address in the preliminary meeting, Gerardo reassured him. A father has the right to access his child, unless there is evidence. Danger. Of course I wouldn't hurt her, Ethan replied, horrified at the mere suggestion. Then we will secure visitation rights, possibly supervised at first, but progressing to more standard arrangements as you demonstrate responsible parenthood. Gerardo consulted his notes. Now, regarding finances, you are currently unemployed, correct? Ethan nodded grimly. I have a few interviews scheduled. But firms in my industry are hesitant because of the publicity. That complicates the alimony calculations, Gerardo mused. We will need to argue that any temporary support order should be based on your realistic earning capacity under current circumstances, not your former salary. I'll pay whatever it takes for Ilara, Ethan said quickly. I don't want Ilara to think I'm trying to shirk my responsibilities. Gerardo noted this with approval. That's the right attitude. We'll seek arrangements that are fair to all parties, while you rebuild your career. As Ethan left the lawyer's office, his phone vibrated with a text message from his mother. Your father and I want to meet our granddaughter. Any progress? Ethan sighed heavily as he typed his reply. Working on it. Lawyers meeting next week. The truth was, Ethan had never felt so powerless in his adult life. His access to his own daughter was dependent on legal negotiations. His professional future was uncertain. Even his parents' relationship with their granddaughter hinged on his ability to navigate the consequences of his actions. For the first time, Ethan was beginning to understand that some mistakes could not be fixed with charm, money, or promises to do better. Some betrayals permanently altered the landscape of trust and respect in ways no apology could restore. As he walked to his car, Ethan passed a young couple pushing a baby stroller, the father's arm protectively around the mother's shoulders. The simple family scene, one he had taken for granted, would be a part of his future, now felt like an impossible dream. The weight of what he had lost by his own choices settled on him like a physical burden. The offices of Fuentes and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a downtown skyscraper with panoramic city views. In a conference room on the west end of the floor, Diana Fuentes and Gerardo Herrera sat across from each other, surrounded by notepads and documents. Their clients waited in separate rooms, Ilara in Diana's office with Lena for company, and Ethan in a smaller conference room, accompanied by his father, Robert. Let's start with these most urgent matters, Diana suggested, her tone businesslike. Temporary custody and support, while the divorce moves forward. Gerardo nodded. My client requests regular visitation with his daughter. He proposes supervised visits initially, progressing to unsupervised day visits as appropriate. Diana consulted her notes. My client agrees to supervised visits twice a week for 2 hours, to be held at Ilara's home, with her sister present as the supervisor. That's quite restrictive, Gerardo observed. Ethan is Ilara's father. There is no allegation he would harm the child. However, there is significant evidence he exercised poor judgment that put both mother and child in danger. Diana countered smoothly. Ilara's priority is establishing a stable routine for a newborn, who has already faced medical challenges. Mr. Vidal has yet to demonstrate his commitment to Ilara's well-being. Gerardo frowned. How can he demonstrate commitment if he's barely allowed to see his daughter? By accepting initially conservative arrangements and building from there, Diana replied. This is a temporary agreement while the divorce moves forward, not a final custody determination. If your client demonstrates reliability and good judgment during the supervised visits, we can revisit the terms in 60 days. Gerardo made a note. I will discuss this with my client. He moved on to the next issue. Regarding temporary alimony, we need to address Mr. Vidal's current employment situation. Indeed, Diana acknowledged. While Mr. Vidal's actions resulted in his termination, my client recognizes it is in little Ilara's best interest that her father rebuild his career. We propose temporary alimony based on 75% of his former salary for a period of 3 months, after which we will reassess based on his employment situation at that time. Gerardo raised his eyebrows. That is more reasonable than I expected. Diana's smile was thin. Ms. Vidal is focused on long-term stability, not short-term punishment. She recognizes that her daughter benefits from having a financially secure father. The negotiations continued for nearly 2 hours, covering access to the family home, Marcos to retrieve personal items only by appointment, medical decisions for little Ilara, joint legal custody, with Ilara having tie-breaking authority, and interim financial arrangements for household expenses. Finally, Diana gathered her papers. I believe we have reached a preliminary agreement on all essential matters. I will draft the temporary order for your review, and pending client approval, we can proceed with the divorce formalities next month. Gerardo nodded. My client still hopes for reconciliation, but he understands we need to establish these temporary arrangements regardless. Diana's expression was unrevealing, though she doubted Ilara had any interest in reconciliation. I will relay that to my client. In the meantime, shall we inform them of our progress? In Diana's office, Ilara sat rigidly on a leather sofa, trying to focus on little Ilara sleeping in her car seat, rather than the anxiety churning in her stomach. Lena was checking her phone beside her, occasionally sharing social media updates to distract her sister. Apparently, Chloe has shut down all her social media accounts, Lena reported. Smart move, considering the death threats. Ilara grimaced. I don't approve of that. As much as I hate what she did, threatening violence is not the answer. You're a better person than me, Lena mumbled. I'd be fine with her experiencing a few consequences. She lost her job and had to move back home with her parents. That is consequences, Ilara pointed out. Besides, Ethan is the one who took vows to me, not Chloe. The door opened, and Diana entered with a look of satisfaction that immediately eased some of Ilara's tension. We've reached preliminary agreements on all key points, Diana announced. Mr. Herrera will discuss them with Ethan, but I believe the terms are quite favorable. She went on to describe the visitation schedule, the alimony arrangements, and the other details they had negotiated. Ilara listened intently, nodding as each point was explained. So he'll be able to see little Ilara starting next week? She clarified when Diana finished. Yes, under the supervision we discussed. Are you comfortable with that timeline? Ilara took a deep breath. Yes. It's not fair to little Ilara to delay her relationship with her father because of what happened between us. Diana studied her client with approval. That is a mature perspective. For what it's worth, Mr. Herrera relayed that Ethan still hopes for reconciliation. Ilara's expression hardened. That's not going to happen. I relayed as much, though not in those exact words. Diana reassured her. Now, I suggest you take the draft agreement home, review it carefully, and we'll finalize it by the end of the week. As Ilara and Lena prepared to leave, Diana added casually, Oh, and Ilara, you might want to know that a prominent women's magazine has contacted me. They're doing a feature on resilience after betrayal and would like to interview you. Ilara immediately shook her head, No interviews. That is your prerogative, of course, Diana acknowledged. But consider this. Right now, your story is being told by that viral video and by speculation on social media. An interview would give you control over your own narrative. I'll think about it, Alara conceded, though she had no intention of laying her pain bare for public consumption. Meanwhile, in the small conference room, Ethan listened as Gerardo explained the terms they had negotiated. His father, Robert, sat beside him, nodding occasionally as various points were clarified. When Gerardo finished, Ethan's first question was immediate. When do I get to see little Alara? Supervised visits can begin next week, assuming Alara approves the agreement, Gerardo confirmed. It's more restrictive than we initially hoped, but it's a starting point. Ethan nodded, desperate for even this limited access to his daughter. And Alara? Did she say anything about us? About trying again? Gerardo exchanged a look with Ethan's father before answering carefully. Ethan, I relayed your interest in reconciliation, but I would not classify Ms. Fuentes' response as encouraging. I believe you need to prepare for the divorce to move forward. Ethan's father placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Son, you need to focus on being a good father now. That relationship is salvageable. The marriage, Ethan shook his head sadly. Some broken things can't be fixed. Ethan choked up, holding back unexpected tears. The finality of the situation was finally setting in. His marriage was over. The life he had built with Alara was irretrievably broken, destroyed by his own choices. All that was left was to salvage what he could from the wreckage and try to build something new. I understand, he finally said. Let's sign the agreement. I want to meet my daughter. 6 months passed with the steady rhythm that comes when a new normal begins to take shape from chaos. Alara had returned to work part-time, arranging a flexible schedule that allowed her to be home with little Alara 3 days a week. The divorce proceedings continued with methodical precision, each piece of paperwork bringing her closer to the official end of her marriage. Ethan had secured a new role at a smaller investment firm, taking a significant pay cut, but grateful for the opportunity to rebuild his career. His supervised visits with little Alara had progressed to unsupervised time on the weekends, and while his relationship with Alara remained strictly professional, focused entirely on co-parenting, he had embraced his role as a father with unexpected dedication. On a crisp autumn morning, Alara sat in her therapist's office for her bi-weekly session. Dr. Helena, a compassionate woman in her mid-50s, was helping Alara process the trauma of the past 6 months and navigate her new identity as a single mother. You look more relaxed today, Dr. Helena observed. How are things going? Alara settled more comfortably into the armchair. Better, I think. Little Alara slept through the night 3 times this week, which feels like winning the lottery. Work is going well. They've been incredibly understanding about my schedule, and the divorce should be finalized next month. How do you feel about that approaching milestone? Alara considered the question carefully. Relieved, mostly. Ready to officially close that chapter. Although I still have moments when I think this wasn't how my life was supposed to be, especially when I see 2-parent families at the park or the grocery store. Dr. Helena nodded encouragingly. That's natural. You're grieving not just the end of your marriage, but the loss of the future you had envisioned. Exactly, Alara nodded. I'm not grieving Ethan anymore. That ended the moment he stood by while Chloe threw that cake. But sometimes I miss the life I thought we would have. And how are the co-parenting arrangements working out? Alara's expression softened. Better than expected, actually. Ethan has really embraced his role as a father. He's reliable with his schedule, follows all the care instructions I send with little Alara, and never brings up our relationship anymore. He's entirely focused on being there for her. That must be a relief, Dr. Helena pointed out. It is. I was so worried little Alara would become a pawn in some bitter divorce battle. But Ethan seems to genuinely understand that our issues shouldn't affect his relationship with her. Dr. Helena made a note on her pad. Last session, we talked about the possibility of you dating again. Have you thought more about it? Ilara laughed, a genuine sound that reached her eyes. With what time? Between little Ilara, work, and finalizing the divorce, I barely have time to shower, let alone date. Time constraints aside, Dr. Helena pressed gently. How do you feel emotionally about the idea? Ilara's amusement faded into consideration. Honestly, I'm not ready. Not because I'm still attached to Ethan, but because I'm still getting to know myself again. Who am I as Ilara? Not just Ethan's wife or little Ilara's mother. I spent so many years defining myself through my relationship with him. I need time to figure out who I am on my own before I can be good company for someone else. Dr. Helena smiled in approval. That's a very healthy perspective. Many people rush into new relationships to fill the void left by a divorce, often with disappointing results. As the session continued, Ilara found herself reflecting on how far she had come since that disastrous birthday party. The woman who stood with cake dripping down her face, utterly humiliated in front of friends and family, felt like a different person now. Someone who existed in another life. The transformation hadn't been easy or linear. There were dark days in the beginning, nights when Ilara wept inconsolably, and little Ilara, exhausted and alone, cried with her. Moments when checking the mail, only to find another legal document reminded her of the failure of her marriage in black and white. Moments when the simplest chores felt overwhelming because they had to be faced alone. But there was also an unexpected silver lining. The colleague who organized a meal chain so Ilara didn't have to cook during her first week home with little Ilara. The neighbors who took turns mowing the lawn without being asked. Lena, who essentially moved in for the first month, providing both practical help and emotional support. And most surprisingly, the strength Ilara discovered within herself, a resilience she didn't know she possessed until circumstances forced her to find it. After her therapy session, Ilara picked up little Ilara from daycare, where she spent 2 days a week. At 10 months old, little Ilara was a cheerful baby, with Ethan's dark hair and Ilara's determined personality. She shrieked with delight when she saw her mother, pulling herself up on the crib railing and bouncing excitedly. "There's my girl," Ilara cooed, signing the register and scooping little Ilara into her arms. "Did you have a good day, my love?" She was a delight as always, the daycare worker reassured her. "She's really getting the hang of those wooden blocks." "A little engineer," Ilara smiled proudly. Every new skill little Ilara developed filled her with wonder and joy. Bright spots of happiness that sometimes made the difficult journey of the past year worth it, even if only because it resulted in this perfect little person. As they drove home, Ilara's phone rang through the car's Bluetooth system. Lena's name flashed on the screen. "Hi, what's up?" Ilara answered. "Are you sitting down?" Lena asked, her voice vibrating with an emotion Ilara couldn't immediately identify. "I'm driving, so yes, why, what happened?" "Nothing bad," Lena reassured her quickly. "But you are not going to believe what just happened. Chloe Roberts contacted me on LinkedIn." Ilara almost blew past a stop sign in her shock. "What? Why would she contact you?" "She wants to apologize to you," Lena explained. "She sent a long message explaining that she's in therapy, working on her issues, and part of her recovery is making amends with the people she hurt. She asked me if you would be willing to meet with her." Ilara was momentarily speechless. The woman who had thrown cake at her pregnant belly, triggering a premature birth and nearly costing little Ilara's life, wanted to apologize. "I told her I would ask, but no pressure either way," Lena continued, when Ilara didn't immediately reply. "I also told her if you agreed to meet, I would be there with you the whole time." Ilara pulled into her driveway, her mind racing. "I don't know, Lena. What would be the point? It's not like we can be friends." "It's not about friendship," Lena pointed out. "It might be about closure for both of you." Ilara looked into the rearview mirror at little Ilara, who was contentedly chewing on a teething toy in her car seat. "Let me think about it. This isn't something I want to rush." After hanging up with Lena, Ilara sat in her parked car for several minutes, processing this unexpected development. Chloe wanting to apologize was the last thing she would have predicted. A part of her wanted to categorically refuse. Why should she give Chloe the satisfaction of easing her conscience? But another part, the part that was working with Dr. Helena to release the anger that was only hurting her, wondered if hearing Chloe out might help close this chapter more completely. That evening, after putting little Ilara to bed, Ilara sat on her patio with a glass of wine, contemplating the strange turns her life had taken. Her phone pinged with a text message from Ethan. "Little Ilara left her favorite stuffed bunny in my car. Want me to drop it off tonight?" Ilara replied. "Not necessary. She has a spare bunny here. You can bring it on Friday for your weekend." The exchange was typical of their communication now. Polite, focused on little Ilara, devoid of personal connection. It was so different from the loving text messages they used to send each other, full of inside jokes and affection. But this new professional relationship served its purpose. They were co-parents now, not partners. And Ilara had made peace with that. A week later, Ilara sat across from Chloe in a quiet corner of a coffee shop Lena had selected for its privacy. Lena sat protectively beside her sister, her expression making it clear she was prepared to shut down the meeting at the first sign of Ilara's distress. Chloe looked different than Ilara remembered. The confident, glamorous woman who had walked into the birthday party in her red dress had been replaced by someone more subdued, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," Chloe began, her voice noticeably nervous. "Honestly, I wasn't sure if you would." "I wasn't sure either," Ilara admitted frankly. "But I'm trying to practice what my therapist calls radical openness, being willing to engage in difficult situations rather than avoiding them." Chloe nodded, fiddling with her coffee cup. "I've been in therapy too. A lot. It turns out I have some pretty serious issues with seeking validation through relationships with unavailable men." She took a deep breath. "But that's not why I wanted to see you. I wanted to apologize to you face to face for what I did that night." Ilara remained silent, waiting. "What I did was inexcusable," Chloe continued. "I was angry and hurt because Ethan had been promising to leave you for months, and suddenly he was acting like he wanted his marriage to work. But that's no justification for physically assaulting a pregnant woman. I put you and your baby in danger because I couldn't control my emotions, and I've had to live with that knowledge every day since." "Yes, you have," Ilara nodded, her voice steady. "And I've had to live with the consequences. Little Ilara was born a month early. She spent her first days in the NICU. We both could have died." Chloe visibly paled. "I know, and there's nothing I can do to change that or fix it. All I can say is that I am deeply sorry, and I'm working every day to become someone who would never do something so horrible again." Lena watched the exchange with cautious attention, ready to intervene if necessary. But Ilara remained calm, her composure unshakable. "May I ask you one question?" Ilara said after a moment. Chloe nodded. "Anything. When did your relationship with Ethan begin?" Chloe hesitated, visibly uncomfortable with the question, but apparently committed to full honesty. "About 6 months before that night. He said things at home were strained, that you were obsessed with the pregnancy and he felt invisible." She looked up, meeting Ilara's eyes directly. "He made me believe your marriage was essentially over in all but name." Ilara absorbed this information with a slight nod. It coincided with the timeline she had pieced together from Ethan's texts and emails discovered during the divorce process. "Did you know I was pregnant when you started seeing him?" Chloe lowered her gaze to her hands. "Yes. He told me immediately. He said it was an accident that you got pregnant despite an agreement to wait. She looked up again, meeting Alara's eyes. He later told me he wasn't sure the baby was his. Alara's composure finally broke slightly, a flicker of pain crossing her features. Lena immediately placed a supportive hand on her arm. That was a lie, Alara said quietly. There was never any doubt about little Alara's paternity, and the pregnancy was planned. We had been trying for over a year. Chloe closed her eyes briefly. I'm not surprised. He told me a lot of things I realized later were probably lies, which is no excuse for my behavior. She added quickly. I still chose to believe what I wanted to believe and act in a way that was unforgivable. The three women sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history, though experienced from dramatically different perspectives, hanging between them. Finally, Alara spoke. I appreciate your apology, Chloe. I really do. I can't say that I forgive you, at least not yet, but I can say that I hope you find peace and learn from this experience. Chloe nodded, tears welling in her eyes. That's more than I deserve. Thank you for listening to me. As they prepared to leave, Chloe asked one last question. How is your daughter, if you don't mind me asking? For the first time, Alara smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. Little Alara is amazing. Strong, smart, determined. Everything she does fills me with wonder. Chloe returned the smile cautiously. She sounds wonderful. I'm glad. I'm glad you both are okay. The meeting ended soon after, and as Alara and Lena walked to their cars, Lena watched her sister closely. Are you okay? That can't have been easy. Alara considered the question. I actually feel lighter. It doesn't change what happened, but knowing she recognizes the gravity of what she did, that she's taking responsibility, it helps somehow. Lena shook her head in admiration. You are incredible. You know that. After everything you went through, you still found compassion for the woman who caused you so much pain. Alara shrugged. It's not really about her. It's about me. What kind of person do I want to be? What example do I want to set for little Alara? Holding on to the anger only drains the energy I need for more important things. Exactly 1 year after the infamous birthday party, Alara stood in her kitchen, putting the finishing touches on a small cake, decorated with a single candle. Little Alara, now 14 months old, played happily in her high chair, babbling excitedly at the colorful sprinkles her mother was adding to the frosting. The doorbell rang, and Alara wiped her hands on a towel before going to answer it. Lena stood on the porch, her arms full of presents and balloons. Happy new beginning, Lena announced, walking in with her usual exuberance. Alara laughed at her sister's enthusiasm. You really didn't need to bring all this. Of course I did, Lena insisted. Today is not just any day. It's the anniversary of you becoming the incredible woman you are now. Little Alara 2.0 launch day, if you will. Alara rolled her eyes good-naturedly as she helped Lena set her offerings on the dining room table. You're ridiculous, but I love you for it. Seriously, though, Lena said, her tone becoming serious. I am so proud of how you handled this entire past year. You have been amazing. Alara was spared having to reply to this compliment by the arrival of more guests. Zara and several other close friends who had been Alara's support system through the difficult year. Each brought food, drinks, or small gifts, creating a festive atmosphere that filled the house with laughter and warmth. As Alara lit the single candle on the cake, she addressed her gathered friends. Thank you all for being here today. A year ago, I thought my life was ending, literally, at one moment. She smiled ironically, but instead, it was just beginning in a way I could not have imagined. Lena raised her glass. To Alara, who showed us all what real strength looks like. To Alara. To Alara, the friends repeated, raising their glasses in a toast. Alara blushed at the attention, but continued. I've learned so much this past year about resilience, about friendship, about what truly matters. She looked at little Alara, who watched the candle flame with fascination. Most of all, I learned that sometimes the thing that feels like the worst moment of your life can actually be the start of something better than you ever dreamed possible. As Alara leaned forward to blow out the candle, she made a silent wish. Not for love or success, or any of the things she might have wished for a year ago, but for the continued strength to face whatever challenges still lay ahead. Because if the past year had taught her anything, it was that she was capable of weathering storms she would have once thought impossible to survive. Later that evening, after the guests had left and little Alara was asleep in her crib, Alara sat alone on her patio, contemplating the stars visible through the breaks in the cloud cover. Her divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier, marking the official end of her marriage to Ethan. In an unexpected development, the proceedings had been less contentious than anticipated, with Ethan agreeing to generous terms regarding alimony and the division of assets. The house where they once planned to raise their family together was now solely Ilara's. She had repainted several rooms, rearranged furniture, and gradually transformed the space into something that reflected her own taste, rather than the compromises of the marriage. It was a physical manifestation of the internal renovations she had undergone, rebuilding her life on her own terms. Her phone pinged with a text message. It was from David, a single father she had met at little Ilara's developmental playgroup, just confirming we're still on for the park tomorrow. Logan is very excited to show little Ilara his new truck. Ilara smiled as she replied affirmatively. David was just a friend for now. Neither of them was ready for more. But his presence in her life represented a possibility. The possibility that one day, when the time was right, she could open her heart again. Not to replace what was lost, but to create something new and unexpected. As she prepared for bed that night, Ilara caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at her was different from the one who had stood covered in icing and humiliation a year ago. This Ilara stood straighter. Her eyes were clearer, her expression more serene. The pain hadn't vanished completely. There would always be a scar where her heart had been broken, but it no longer defined her. In the nursery, Ilara paused to watch little Ilara sleeping peacefully, her small chest rising and falling in the soft glow of the nightlight. Whatever happened, this perfect child had emerged from the chaos, and because of that, Ilara couldn't regret any part of the journey that had brought them here. A year ago, a room full of people had laughed as cake ran down her pregnant belly. They stopped laughing when she collapsed, when the gravity of their cruelty became evident in her medical emergency. But in the end, it wasn't their laughter, or even their eventual shame, that mattered. What mattered was that Ilara had discovered within herself a capacity for resilience, forgiveness, and joy that no humiliation could diminish. She had found her voice, her strength, and her purpose, and that transformation from victim to survivor and thriver was worth celebrating with a single candle and a wish for the future. As she turned out the light, Ilara whispered into the dark, "Happy new beginning to me."